Hey, Cathy, welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So excited. I can't believe it's been over 3 years since we last connected on communication for dementia caregivers and their families. And we've got a lot to catch up on.
Yep.
First, I like to kind of kick off the show with picking some words of inspiration and encouragement from the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. The one, let's see, that I got picked out for us today says, you don't always need a plan. Sometimes you just need to breathe, trust, let go, and see what happens.
I agree with that.
Yes. I think I choose some of these because they're ones that I need to hear. And so especially, I think one of the lessons in caregiving is learning how to let go of everything, because nothing ever really goes as planned.
Exactly.
Nothing in 2020 goes as planned. So we're learning how to be resilient.
Yes, we are. Yes,
And roll
we are.
with it. So it's a good reminder. Just breathe, trust, and let go. I find that gives more peace. Well, I want to dive into it. First, I know you've got over 20 years of experience in the aging industry, and I want to hear and give you the opportunity to share your story a little bit of how that all came about. Like, how did you end up in this space?
Yeah. So how I ended up in this space was slightly accidental. I was in my senior year of senior year of college, and one of my final projects I had to take for my degree was to run a program, and where I applied psychological concepts to a specific population. And as my ego took over, I heard a lot of my classmates talking about how they were going to be intervening with either children or adolescents. And my goal at that moment in time was I want to stand out when I stand up and present. So my goal was, I'm going to find a population no one is going out and touching, no one is going out and reaching. And I wanted to work with a population so that when I got up in front of my classroom, I was actually talking about a population no one had experience with. So people would pay attention to me. I'm all about, I like to get the attention. So I dove into becoming a psychosocial assistant at a nursing home. I did some volunteer work and then dove into the activity professional program and did volunteer work there, and then found right away those were my people. I just fell in love with the residents that I was working with. It felt very natural. The way in which I typically communicated with them just was something that it just came out of me, and the relationships that I built with them, even though they were 5 minutes at a time, 5 more minutes tomorrow, it just lit something in me and made me realize that was my passion. So that's where I started, was in college, and I have done all my master's work for psychology and health psychology and gerontology to gear it towards that, because it just felt right. So I have never deviated from the senior care agency, except, interestingly, last year I decided that I wanted to take my skills and my concepts, the things that I was thinking about and the ways in which I thought were really important in communication, and apply them to a different population. And since my son has autism, it felt like a really good fit. So I became a registered behavioral therapist, went through all the training, got the certification and the license, and very quickly realized this was not a population that worked really well with what I was trying to do. It was hard work. I was the oldest one in the group. All of my coworkers were in their 20s. They were buff. They were, getting on the floor and then able to get up off the floor. So what I found was that the communication techniques that I had been using all this time and developing with a former business partner of mine, Tammy Newman, really worked well with the clients, those in the autistic clinic, and worked really well with the parents. But my passion just kept leading me back to senior care. So now I kind of have this kind of dual thing going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you're certainly still exposed with your son being autistic. It's good that for those that are listening that have that also, you know, might be in the sandwich generation, caring for aging parents, caring for young kids
Yep.
with different developmental disabilities. And my older brother has development disabilities. So I'm learning here, even ways that I can help better communicate with him. So I think it's good that they translate to different populations, and you found your niche, and there's nothing wrong with that. And Lord knows we need you. The silver tsunami is drowning us all, frankly, the
Yes.
caregiver community. So we need your help, and we're glad to have you. And I'm sure the senior industry is as well. The you say that, you know, you have this unapologetic style to your educational training, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that adjective. Explain what that means.
What that means is that for me, it's very important to be able to dive into being vulnerable. I think that when we're vulnerable and we're able to say, I screwed up, I messed up, let me tell you about this concept, but I'm going to tell you about it in the way in which I learned, which was a complete mess and a disaster. And I think when I say apologetic, and this was something Tammy and I came up with too, is I'm not going to apologize for the mistakes I made, because those mistakes I've made were things that were gifts to learn from. Okay, that doesn't work. And what a great concept to have in your mind. It's just as important to know what doesn't work as it is to know what does.
Mm-hmm.
So, to not apologize for making mistakes, to not apologize for diving a little deeper, disclosing a little bit more to people that you're working with. One of the things I find really, really impactful is, you know, when you're working with a caregiver, something I did over the summer due to COVID was just do as much complimentary consultation as I could possibly do. I was finding so many caregivers were literally sheltering themselves in place with their loved one because of the fear of COVID, and the stress was over consuming them. And what I found was when I was consulting with them and talking with them, sometimes just giving advice and saying, well, you should have done it this way. Well, did you try it this way? It falls on deaf ears. So a lot of my consultation came from, look, oh God, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I screwed up so bad when I did it like this. Or, oh, I can't tell you the story of when I messed up so seriously. And it's amazing. You can even sense it on the telephone. People actually lean in to hear that. People want to feel normalized about what they're experiencing. And when we share our stories in a very vulnerable way, they lean in and they actually get more from it. And it opens up this space then for someone to go, wow, so we're on equal playing field. You've screwed up. I love hearing that. This makes me see you're human. And then they lean in and they say, so what did work? How did you change that? So now they're in a space where they're actually asking for assistance. And
Mm.
that's the strongest space in which you can actually give somebody something that they're going to soak in.
Mm.
Now it's not unsolicited advice, it's solicited advice, but you have to take a route in which to get there. And I think that route is vulnerability. It's being
Yeah,
unapologetic.
finding that common ground, like you said,
Absolutely.
it's
I,
important.
I think
Relatable.
coming in as an expert, I think, when you do that, it can be very standoffish to a lot of people, and especially to caregivers who've never done this before. It just feels overwhelming. Well, I'll never be able to achieve that. You sound like you're fantastic at this. I'm stinking. You know, mom threw her breakfast plate at me this morning. Clearly, I'll never reach that level. And we don't have to come at it that way. None of us are complete experts at this. None of us know day to day how this is all going to play out. And just like that quote that you said, breathe, take that moment. You can't plan.
No, can't plan everything for sure, and even the best laid plans. I hear what you're saying. Sometimes people are like, it's funny, like people sometimes will call me the happy healthy caregiver. I'm like, oh no, I'm not the happy healthy caregiver. That's just kind of like, the end state mantra of what I'm hoping that we can all guide toward. I'm still a work in progress. We're all still a work in progress, but I think sometimes, especially with social media, where we're only showing the best of, our
Yeah.
best of greatest hits reel. And sometimes I joke when I'm like in those moments where you know, that I probably should have a nemesis account called the unhappy, unhealthy caregiver, because people do need to see that you're like a real person sometimes. And that it's not always going great, you know, that you know,
No.
there are those ugly cry moments and the times where you frustrate, and the times I don't even want to be in my own skin. So we have to definitely find that relatable piece. Um,
Yes.
I really want to dive into the communication part, because that's my one of the most favorite things that you all have taught me, and it sticks with me over time, particularly the yes and. Like, I even write the word but in sentences, and I catch myself, you know, backing my butt out, frankly, of my sentences.
That's
Um,
awesome. I'm
yeah,
gonna write
and
that down. I'm backing my butt out.
backing the butt out, the big old butt, um,
Yeah.
because you know, it's like, yes, COVID sucks, and there's some silver linings in this crazy ass
Yeah.
year as well. So, um, anyway, tell us about the Dementia Raw is kind of your overarching one of your communication platforms, and Raw is an acronym, right? So, maybe just expand on that and some of the communication
Right.
principles you live by.
Right. So Dementia Raw was a program that Tammy and I created, and it really was just a great name to encapsulate the concepts that we really felt were the most important to pass along in regards to how can we teach somebody how to communicate with anybody, truly anybody. We focus on dementia, but truly anybody. And how can we do it in a real, authentic, and wholehearted way? And so that's where the acronym of RAW comes from. So the Dementia RAW method essentially is something that Tammy and I created together, in which we encapsulated and incorporated two main concepts in communication and empathy. That's basically what we did. We took the pillars of empathy and we married them with four main rules of improv. And although those two things don't seem to be relatable at all, I think what we found is that it was actually a marriage made in heaven. Improv, as most people probably understand it as right now, is a form of comedy. A lot of people will go to an improv show or they'll watch Whose Line Is It Anyway? And yes, that is improv in action. But where improv started is actually from a social worker who created a set of rules so that adolescents who were coming from a different place demographically could still connect. And so it was just a basis of rules, and it was rules about communication. How can I communicate with someone that I wouldn't normally understand? And so you take that idea and you go, well, isn't that exactly what we're doing with persons who are living with dementia? There are moments where I don't perfectly understand what you're saying, what and how you're expressing yourself. So we've taken the rules of improv and we've brought them back full circle. Not only is the concept of it fun because it's based in game, it's also based in a concept where there's no shame, there is no judgment, there is no wrong. If an interaction between two people where they're utilizing the rules of improv goes estranged, we just cut it, we laugh it off, and we move on to the next one. There is no need to go cut, cut, cut. No, no, no. We're not directing a movie here.
Mm-hmm.
And that again brings you back to, that comment you made this morning, the quote, you can't plan. And that's the heart and soul of improv, is you don't have to, and don't waste your time doing it. Especially when you're working with somebody who has dementia, your best laid plans will never go the way you intend them. So improv is from the seat of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
It's off the cuff. It's just work with what you've got in that moment.
That's so good. And when we spoke over 3 years ago, I didn't have a lot of direct experience with cognitive impairment. I have my brother who's developmentally disabled that has this challenging, frankly, particularly because we're siblings and there's, that we're not his parents and he's older than I am. And so, it's a lot of tough love examples there. But my mom definitely, we never had her diagnosed because kind of like, what was the point? She was on hospice for a length of time, but definitely had some cognitive things going on, some sundowners. And now I have a relative as well that has frontal temporal dementia. So I'm more in the space now than I was, or exposed to it. So I have a couple real life examples, if you want to humor me here, about some things that happened.
Sure.
And some of these are related to my clients. Like I'm just like with COVID, the mask, and trying to get our loved ones to comply with the mask wearing. I mean, do you have any suggestions or things that you've seen work with that communicating?
Yeah, so I actually was working with some clients over the summer about how to we talk activity professionals. That's something that they're saying is they're still trying to get in there. They're still trying to do as much as they can in a facility to keep people engaged. And that was one of the biggest things they brought up is how do I keep somebody to wear their mask? And I chimed in during this discussion and I said, first of all, maybe working together in some way, shape, or form where they're making the masks themselves or contributing to it, using artwork on it, making it special and unique. The other thing is, perhaps because we're wearing it over our nose and our mouth, using some kind of Sharpie marker or something where you actually have the outline of the nose and the mouth so that they know that's where it goes, almost like a Halloween mask. It was just a suggestion. Don't know if it worked. Don't know if the facility utilized it or not, but it was a huge point of contention. One of the other things regarding masks was when talking to some clients over the summer, they were very concerned when they had to take their loved one to the doctor's office, how to explain to them that so many people were wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to dive into, well, so there's this thing called a pandemic, Mom, and I don't know if you remember, but we're in the middle of one right now. Like there's no reason to bring more
Fear.
absolutely levels of panic to Mom's life when she's already just trying to figure out how to get through her day. So that's where I kind of worked with them in regards to how do we communicate that this is what's going on. And it just came from Mom, but before we go, so it's framing it, Mom, before we go, and you might notice people are going to be wearing masks. They're just doing that to keep themselves healthy because nobody wants to get sick.
Yeah.
Just that simple. I mean, you don't have to elaborate on we don't need to do a CNN report on why someone's wearing a mask. We can just make it, this is what healthcare workers are doing now. It's really cool. Or you can say, if you see somebody wearing a mask, Mom, I think it's great that they're doing that because they may not feel great today. So they're just wanting to keep their germs to themselves.
Yeah.
Simplifying it, just explaining it, framing it, not framing it too soon, right before you get out of the car, maybe again before you walk through that front door. And then again, it's just like, Mom, we're going to wear a mask too because we find that it's really courteous. And what's cool about that is most of those loved ones that we're working with are and from a generation and where they're more courteous and more conscientious of taking care of others than I think our younger generation is. I hope I say that, and I have children possibly listening, but I think if we just frame it where, hey, I want to protect her because I wasn't feeling good the other day, Mom. Let's wear a mask so we make sure the nurse doesn't get sick. Who's going to go? No, I'm not going to do that. I mean, it's possible, but try that route first.
Yeah, those are good tips for sure. Another situation that we encountered, my mom had these like adventures, I would call them, where just like you never knew kind of which version of her you were going to get. And some of them were hilarious. She thought my sister rode in on a horse. Like we didn't even ride horses, my little sister. And she's like, did you see her? She was so good, those jumps and really detailed, which is amazing. And those were fun to go along with, frankly. I'm like, I know, right? Like, but then sometimes, she would have things where she would, like the worst case scenario where she would think that my brother and my older sister live with them. She's like that she honestly felt like they tried to kill her. And I was like, okay. You have not moved out of this bed in over a year, and you try, you can't reason with them. But when it comes to things like that, like, I don't know, what would you have done?
Yeah. So one of the things we developed is that, again, agreement is your best friend, but there's different ways to find and be in agreement. And so verbally agreeing with her, yeah, they're going to kill you, probably isn't the route you want to take. So the other two are really, really important to step into. So you can agree with somebody verbally, and if that's not going to work, the second way you agree with somebody is body language. Agree with them on a physical level. And where you can do that is if you're struggling to figure out what the emotion is they're expressing, you actually mirror their body language. So you actually look at what they're doing, facial expressions, how they're holding their body, and you do the same thing. And
Mm.
essentially, that does two things. It helps you step into the space that they're in, because no one likes to be somber, upset, and have a cheerleader come at them. You want someone to sit next to you and be somber and upset too. And so maybe we'll hold our hand together. Maybe you'll reach over and we'll hold hands. The other thing that does when you mirror somebody's body language is it helps your brain. It actually triggers this biofeedback loop that says to your brain, the last time you held your face that way, this was the emotion you were experiencing. And this is actually something that's been proven. And it's an experiment they do a lot of times in psychology classes. If you hold a pencil like this, your face, your jaw muscles are doing the exact same thing that they do when you're happy. So we have the happy emotion and we express it with a smile.
Yeah.
You can do the opposite. You can create the smile and your body and your mind will actually feel happier. So there is this reverse thing that you can do. And if you're struggling with how do I know what this person's really feeling, try on their body language. But in regards to the example you just gave, I think the most important thing is to be in agreement with somebody emotionally. And this is a really hard place for people to go. This is a challenge, but this I think is the key. If there's ever a key, this is the key. None of us as humans really like to step into somebody's discomfort. Like, oh, here we go again. Or, we just don't like that. We prefer to, especially with dementia, we want to kind of dismiss or redirect uncomfortable feelings they're having. So we add stuff. Well, it's okay, mom. Don't worry about it. We say things like that, right? That's incredibly dismissive. But if you step in and agree with the emotion, and the emotion is, okay, so she thought her children were trying to kill her. And believe me, you're not the first person to have shared this one with me.
Horrible.
Yeah, a lot of people deal with this one. Okay, so you have to take a minute when you hear her say that, and you have to dig into what's the emotion behind that. When someone says they're trying to kill me, what's the emotion?
I mean, I imagine she probably felt like she was scared and she wasn't getting her way, or something was uncomfortable for her. Yeah.
Bam, you just got 3 right there. You just pulled it out, right? Scared, uncomfortable, not getting her way. So you've got 3 options now you can go with. Have you felt those 3 ways in your life?
Yes.
Yeah, right? So you can yes and that emotion by matching it and going, sounds like you're really scared. That would be really scary if I felt like someone was trying to hurt me in my home. Let's talk more about it. What's making you scared? Right? So yeah, wow, that sounds scary.
Just
You're
validate the emotion, not
validating the emotion. Don't talk them out of it. No one likes to be talked out of their feelings. No one.
She has a rebel. Well, she had, my mom passed it September 2nd, but she, some like getting used to the past tense is a struggle lately. So,
okay.
But she had a rebel personality for sure. So it had to always be her idea, frankly.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
So go with that. So that's a gift. That's something, it has to go her way. Make sure that whatever you're doing, it's not you telling her, it's her finding it. Being like, what did you do to this, mom? Like, how would you handle this? But yeah, it's stepping into that emotion. And it's, and this is where that vulnerability, that self-disclosure comes in. What you're saying, mom, sounds, and again, you can even see my face is mirroring it. Sounds like you're really scared. I was really scared the other day when I thought someone broke into the house. Freaked me out. Oh, it was so hard to work through. What can I do to help you? Or tell me more.
Yeah, I'm on your side. I'm partnering with you. Let's figure this out.
Yes. So that's
so
the yes is the emotion, and the and is I'm partnering with you. How can I help you? Tell me more. That sounds really scary. I was scared too. Boy, but here's what I did, and it made me feel better when I called you and we held hands, or whatever the case may be. So it's stepping in and being in agreement with the emotion. And that's a piece of work you have to do as a caregiver. You have to stop and take a step back and say, okay, mom thinks I'm poisoning her. What's the emotion behind that? It just takes a minute. It's meaningful. It's mindfulness.
I love these examples because these are like hopefully these will help people, but there was another one. So I have this relative that has frontal temporal dementia, and she has what we call fusses, where she just kind of like fixates on details. And sometimes it can lead to repetitive calling of a family member and just dissecting it. And it's hard. You think you try different tactics to try to appease her. I don't know. Do you have anything in that
Yes. Oh,
situation?
yes, I do. So
Okay.
actually, you saying that makes me think of two things. And again, it's how this technique can work with anybody. When you're speaking that language to me, we just said that to me, it made me think of my relationship with my son. And he, because of autism, can be very repetitive. We cycle through the same conversation and he just says it in different ways. And this was something I had reflected on several years back. And I was brought to a therapy session with him where we had kind of dug through some stuff. And what they had disclosed to me, so there's two things to this, is my reaction to him was actually causing him to ruminate.
Mm.
So I think that this is an interesting concept to consider with anybody, specifically somebody with dementia. But when I refer to my son, it was my response to him. And it was my response that was giving him the impression I wasn't fully hearing him. And my response was typically, I'm sorry you're feeling like that, Jack. That's stinks. Which is, in essence, a great thing to say. It's very sympathetic. But on a psychological perspective, it actually said to him, yeah, that really sucks. Let's move on.
You're right,
And
right.
and it's dismissive. It feels dismissive. And so someone who really wants to express how they're feeling and don't feel like they got heard are going to say it again and again and again. So I switched my language up with him and I started being specifically grateful, which is what Tammy and I had come up with. And what that essentially says is try the words thank you. And so I switched it, and Jack would come to me and tell me about his day, and he'd kind of, and the story would go on, and my eyes would start to glaze over, and I'd remember, okay, hold on. And I'd stop and I say, Jack, thank you so much for telling me this. It's really meaningful that, as a 16-year-old, you're still willing to come to me and tell me about your bad day. That's rough.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for telling me how hard it is to kind of be around people that don't understand you. It helps me understand you better. And he stopped because he felt heard.
Yeah.
And I see this repeat, and I see this exact same thing when working with persons who are living with some kind of cognitive impairment. Oftentimes, the repetitiveness in a statement is coming from the fact that they didn't feel heard the last time.
Mm.
And so it's really, again, a mindful act of what am I doing? What am I putting out there? What am I doing? And is that why I'm getting a reflection back on
Yeah.
this repetitive action? And so I see this a lot. We when we did a lot of our touring a couple of years ago, we would talk to facilities and work with nursing homes, and we would kind of hit the nail on the head in regards to this concept of redirection. Um, Redirection is a term a lot of facilities use, a lot of long-term care use. However, when you consider the concept of it, redirection is basically saying, it's okay, don't worry, we're going to go over here.
Yeah.
It's
Squirrel. Like, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's incredibly dismissive. And,
Mm.
you know, why not just stop and listen and be specifically grateful for the fact that they're sharing this with you, that they're telling you this story, that must be a really hard story to share. I'm so glad you trust me. Being specifically grateful, again, is a really big act in mindfulness. You've got to stop yourself and go, okay, how can I be grateful for the fact that this person is sharing this with me? It takes a second, but if you stretch yourself and go, wow, you've really enlightened me on something that went on with my kids the other day. Thank you so much. How helpful is that? Everybody loves to be acknowledged for
Yeah.
helping and sharing.
It's good. I mean, I'm
So,
thinking about the situations like with her, and you know, one thing I could have been grateful for in this situation when she called me repeatedly was it shows a little bit about what her value system was. Like she was remunerating, is that the right word, or fussing over,
ruminating, yeah.
yes, over getting my brother's ex-wife had passed away, and she just wanted to get her name right in her head. She was like, did she go by this or did she go by that? Well, obviously that was super important to her that she,
Right.
so that's very cool. So you replace I'm sorry, or like redirection with thank you.
With
That's
thank
great.
you, and any kind
Yes.
of way in which you can be grateful, really grateful towards them. So
Mm,
thank you is a wonderful way to start. A wonderful way. And if you start this practice, this mindful practice, we used to joke about this. You'll start by saying, I'm thank you,
thank
because
you so much. Yeah.
you'll catch yourself going with the I'm sorry, but you'll
Hmm.
catch yourself halfway.
I
And
love
again,
that.
I'm sorry. It's so easy for us to just spit out of our heads, right? We don't even think about it. And that's again where this act of mindfulness comes in, is that I have to stop and think, what can I be grateful for? And that can be a hard that can be a hard thing to find. But when you find it, it's going to be amazing how it switches that conversation.
Yes, it's so good. And the buts and the I'm sorry's, those are flags that for us.
Yeah.
What other
Yeah.
common pitfalls do you see people making? Like, man, if they could just do these couple things that could just totally change their relationships.
Okay. So I have two of those. Again, one of them is something I've kind of learned as I was raising my kids, is to me, this is a great mantra to live by. You only have 100 bullets. So if
Okay.
you think about that in regards to, you were born, I'm not a gun, I don't carry a gun, I don't know about it, but I like the concept, I like the visual. You were born with 100 bullets, right? You can blow those on whatever you choose is the most important thing to you. There are people you will see in your life where you notice that they're actually blowing 5, 10 bullets a day, sometimes even in an hour, right? Because they are just so entrenched in the concept, I have to be right, and I'm going to prove to you that I'm right. And that's that bullet,
Mm,
right? And how often do we really need to get up on that soapbox? Especially with somebody with dementia who's cycling and has a very short loop, and they may be repeating themselves and having a different experience in 10 minutes. How, when you think about, I only have 100 bullets, it completely rephrases and reminds you, is this really worth arguing over?
mm.
Is this really worth me having to waste my breath essentially to prove to you? And when you hold that concept in your head, you're like, okay, it's okay that she thinks there's a purple bird in the tree. We're going to move on. I don't
Yeah.
need to waste my bullet on that.
It's not a safety issue. It's not hurting anybody. It's
No, no, right, right.
yeah.
You save your bullets for those,
Yeah.
right? So one bullet I would say is absolutely something we should all be utilizing this year, is to vote.
Yeah.
I think that's a bullet everyone should be pulling out of their arsenal, right? That's a
Yes.
good one to use. It's an important one to use. But when you think about the the detriment if we don't, what are the effects of if we don't make our voices heard in this particular instance? Yeah, that's a really important one to use. But does
Mhm.
mom think there's a purple bird in the tree? Does she think that tomorrow's Easter? Is it worth it?
Did she
Because
think
you're
my
gonna,
dad is still alive? Okay. I'd like to know
yeah,
his whole
okay,
life
yeah,
too.
how, so she wants to think she wants to continue to feel his memory there. So yeah, let's talk about dad. Tell me, what was the funniest thing you ever did with dad? Tell me about your first date with dad. She
Yes.
wants to remember him. So go there with her.
I love
The
that.
other, yeah, the other thing is, so 100 bullets. Oh, and then the concept of, I think we give a lot of people a lot of advice.
We should on a I love saying that.
Yeah.
We should all over.
Yeah, and then no one ever really accepts that gracefully. No one likes to be told, well, didn't you try this, you idiot? Because that's the underlying comment there,
Yeah.
is you're stupid, you didn't figure this out for yourself. Um, so it's this concept of deciding and actually communicating with your partner what space they need you to be in. Do they need you to be in a space where they're looking for advice? Or do they need you to be in a space where you're holding the bucket for them? You're giving them a vessel in which to just get it all out. Because more often than not, when we're angry, frustrated, when a person with dementia is just agitated and frustrated, we want to shut it down. But what we really need to do is give them a space to get it out. Tell me what you're mad about. Yeah, let's go. Let's go punch a bag. Let's go throw a pillow. Let's get it
Mhm.
out. You're actually creating a space, just like if you'd hold a bucket for someone who's vomiting,
Mm,
right? And
good.
and they're gonna vomit anyway. So do you want to put it in a bucket, or do you want to get it on your shoes? That's a choice you can make, right? And it's an active participation. And when you create that language of, do you want me to hold the bucket for you? This is something I do with my husband all the time. I can solve your problem. Do you want me to give you the answer, or do you want me to hold the bucket? And it's a beautiful thing, because I now know what my role is. He now knows what his role is.
Mm,
And we're not stepping on each other and offending each other. So I think we don't give people enough space to just get out the yucky feelings. I see that as being a pitfall too.
for sure.
We waste our bullets. We
Guilty.
waste our bullets, and we don't give people enough space to just get it out. Let's go, go,
Yes.
go. I'm here. I'm not going to judge you. Just vomit it out. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's just have a big barf bag bucket. What are you most excited about in your business right now? I know it's been an unusual year. Like, what do
Yeah, it has. I think what I've been really enjoying recently, and again, this is just something I've done over the summer with COVID, is I've really been inspired by seeing people posting that they're doing the absolute best that they can at home with their loved ones, but they're struggling. They're struggling on their own self-care. They're struggling on how to take care and keep care of themselves because the workload has doubled. Um, and so what I've been just really inspired with is just talking to people right now one-on-one. Just tell me your story. I'm here to listen. And when you're ready, if you want me to hold that bucket for you, that can be my role. When you're ready, I'm here for any suggestions that may or may not work. And if
right?
they don't work, we'll talk next week and talk about how they bombed, and we can laugh about it and we can try something new.
Yep.
So at this point, it's really, to me, what's really important right now is reaching out to those caregivers that they are, without even realizing it, totally sheltered in space, in their own place, and without the help of all those extras that we used to have. You know, we used to be able to get home health to come in. We used to have sister down the street come in. That's
Yeah.
not anymore. So much more work is being put on a primary caregiver, and they are really struggling to take care of themselves.
Yeah. And some of them are working remotely, trying to help their kids with virtual education. Like, I think about these people all the time and I'm like, they need a lot of grace right now for sure. Um, what, speaking of self-care, what's your self-care looking like right now?
Okay, so I am excited that I've been continuing to exercise every day. I take 2 rest days, um, and I try to do it early in the morning. So one of the ways that that's worked for me is that I figured out that my chronotype, the pattern that my circadian rhythm works the best in, is that I'm a morning person. And so when COVID first hit and we were all in that big shutdown, it became like this like sleep fest. Like every day was Saturday.
Kind
And
of
I
fun for
was
a while.
right for a while. For me, it
Yeah.
was like after a week, I'm like, what am I doing to myself? This feels awful. And so, you know, identifying where your circadian rhythm is. Are you a night person? Are you a morning person? Are you somewhere in between? Identifying that. And for me, identifying that I always seem to have better days. I just kind of tracked it. Seem to have better days if I got up and exercised first thing in the morning, kind of got that out of the way. It made
Right.
me feel like, okay, so maybe the cookie that lands on my plate will be okay later. Those endorphins really do something. And on the days that I can't exercise, it's walking. Get out there, stretch those legs, breathe some fresh air,
Yeah.
put on that coat. It's good. Um, my, my other part of self care that I feel is really, really important is sleep.
Mm.
And that's a big thing I like to talk to caregivers about. A lot of them do not ever consider the fact or recognize how little sleep they're getting.
I think they
And
think they can survive on, a lot of people think they don't need sleep.
right, right.
I don't
Yeah. And
know that I think that's a myth. Like, our brain needs time, right, to process and
oh,
file
yeah.
all this data and content. And Lord knows there's a lot happening right now.
Yeah.
So
I
probably need
think a
more
lot of
filing time.
right. Biologically, sleep is more important than food or water. You
Mm.
will die of sleep deprivation before you die of starvation. The other thing that kind of exacerbates what you just mentioned, that thought that we don't need sleep, is that no one's talking about it. So I ask you a question. The last time you went to a doctor's office, did they ever ask you how your sleep was?
No.
They never knew.
It took me a while actually to figure out that there was like three legs to this health table with sleep, food, and exercise. And I'll admit, like, I was sacrificing sleep to get up and exercise. But one of the silver lining blessings for COVID has been, I'm loving that I don't have to fight with the Atlanta traffic, and I am getting up without an alarm. I'm still getting up early, But my body is just telling me, my body and my puppy lately is telling me when it needs to get, when I need to get up, because her bladder is smaller. So,
Yeah.
but that's been a beautiful thing. And I used to strive to try to get 7 hours of sleep, and I was failing miserably before COVID. But now my average sleep time is over 7 hours, and I love that. I can see and feel a difference, actually, despite all this, other things that are happening. But yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Sleep is a
caregivers,
huge thing. I've talked.
yeah, they need to figure that out. Whether it's
Yeah.
higher, taking shifts with their loved ones, or um, something, but something has to give, and it can't be your sleep. It can't be your health.
No, no. In fact, that's what I've talked to a lot of clients about. Almost every single one of them, when I ask what their sleep pattern is like and what kind of sleep quality they're getting, they report it to be pretty bad. And so once we can get to a place where they're ready to hear some suggestions, and sometimes that's 3 calls down the road,
Yeah.
they just want to talk about it first. Sometimes it's remembering when you had a baby, you slept when they slept. Because you can do a restorative nap of 10 or 20 minutes if that's when mom takes her nap, and close your eyes. That's okay to do. Um, and also just creating a good bedtime routine for yourself, whenever that might be. I've encouraged, because sleep, even for the older adult, is such a difficult thing for them to achieve. And it is, I think, a huge part of what we see during the day as behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Something Tammy and I came up with was that behaviors has such a negative connotation. No one likes to be defined as someone who's behavioral, who has behavior issues. But when you think about the fact that most older adults do not get the sleep that they need, they're interrupted frequently through the night, even without they may have mental capacity issues. Their bladder's smaller, like the puppy, right? They
Mm-hmm.
may have arthritic pain. They may have a bed partner who's snoring. There's so many different levels that have nothing to do with dementia whatsoever that can cause disruptive sleep. And so when I talk to caregivers, one of the first questions I ask them is, have you ever had a problem in a relationship based in sleep? And everybody raises their hand. Yeah. Everybody's had a problem. Well, they were a night owl. I was a morning person. There's always something. And it can create a lot of disruption in sleep. So with the older adult, they're not getting enough sleep. They're not staying in that stage of sleep that helps them become restored, right? That kind of gets all that garbage out from the day before. And so that backs up, it piles up like a big bag of garbage. And the next day, you're going to see the repercussions of that. So it's creating a really good bedtime routine for that person you're caring for, and
Mm-hmm.
creating an environment that works. So do they need a night light to be able to see things? Okay, great. Does a salt lamp work better than a bright white light plugged in at the floor? You know, are we eliminating the TV and the screen time? Are we maybe incorporating some lavender scents and, some tea at night, and just making it a routine? Because your body over time will start to equate. Every time they lay in this bed with this cup of tea and they pull out this book, it just creates a sense of calm.
Yep. Yep. Pull the blinds, do this, there's, a lot of things with parenting too, like when you had kind of this, routine at night, and everybody needs that. Frankly, I love we all, I think, thrive better on a routine. So
Yes.
those are great words of wisdom. All right. Are we ready for the lightning round, Cathy?
Yes, and I'm not familiar with this, so I'm excited to hear what it's all
Okay.
about.
So this is my book. It's the Just for You Daily Self-Care Journal. The intention was that I just wanted to make self-care intentional for a caregiver or anybody. It's not even for a caregiver specifically, but there are little journaling prompts on every day. The pages look like this, so you can write and color on them too.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and it just gets people thinking about something. You could write a sentence, or you can write a paragraph, or bullet a list, or whatever. So I picked out some different
Nice.
questions for you. What was the last thing you said no to? Because setting boundaries is part of self-care. So
Oh, goodness. And it's lightning, so I got to move fast. What was the last thing I said no to? I don't say no very much. Oh my gosh.
Okay, hard one. We could
Yeah,
skip.
that's too
We
hard.
could
Wow,
skip.
why is that so
All
hard?
right, how about this one? What activity did you do as a child that brought you great joy?
Playing teacher,
I know. I was a teacher too, and
playing school,
playing school. I
playing
loved it.
school.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It tells you a lot about who you are today too.
Yes, it does.
Where would you like to visit in your dream tonight? Speaking of sleep,
Say that again.
where
Where
would
would
you like
I?
to visit in your dream tonight, if you could pick?
Gosh. In my dream tonight, because I'm not at home right now. Um, the last trip I went on that was fantastic was Amsterdam with my husband for an anniversary trip. So
Oh,
I'd love to go
fun.
back and
I
just
know.
and yeah,
I'm
wander the
ready.
streets maybe without a mask.
I'm ready to travel. I'm dreaming about things. Okay, last question. What do you geek out about? What gets you all geeky?
Sleep. Talking about
Talking
sleep,
about sleep.
talking about yes, talking
Okay.
about it, the importance of it, the biology of it. I have dove into so much research on it. I just geek out about it. And if you get me going, you'll never get me to stop.
Awesome. All right. Well, we need you. We need you to be our little self-care sleep bully. What, I mean, is there anything else you'd like to add? Parting words with some topics you wish? I know we didn't talk about your book, so if people want more information on the Yes and talk a little bit about that, where people can get your book
Yeah,
and
yeah. So the book is titled Start with Yes. Both Tammy and I wrote the book together, and you can find it on Amazon. Just start with yes, look it up.
we'll link to
And
it
it's
in the
written
show notes.
Yeah, and it's written in such a way so that a caregiver, if they can just commit 10 minutes a night, 10 minutes a day to reading the book, they should finish it in a week.
Hmm.
And that was incredibly important to both of us because we felt like caregiving books, especially that have some really good tips and techniques, need to be accessible and available immediately.
Mm,
So as you're getting those 10 minutes in a day, you're learning a tip, a technique, an idea that you can implement right away. And what we didn't want to do was bog somebody down, a caregiver who already doesn't have time, didn't want to bog them down with a gigantic book with tiny, tiny little font that they were eventually just going to use as a coaster for their coffee the next
yeah.
day. So very proud of that
Could
book.
even
Very
keep
proud
this one in the bathroom, it sounds like. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
part of our natural systems. We got to spend time in there. So, and how can people find out more about what you're doing, your certification programs, and
Yeah. So the website is silverdawninfo@gmail.com. Um, Sil and the no, I apologize. That's the email. Yep. The website is silverdawconsulting.com. And they can go there and find about the certification that Tammy and I created called the Certified Dementia Communication Specialist Program, which is something professionals and family members, non-professionals can utilize. And on there is also some offerings for some consultations for family members right now who are really struggling. So whether I do an independent consultation with someone, or there are several family members that are trying to deal with an issue. I've been getting on video platforms with them and talking to 3 and 4 family members at a time. My parting words of wisdom, I think, is you had mentioned this maybe even prior to us talking today, was the sandwich generation that we're talking about, right? Where maybe you were taking care of your kids, and then you were taking care of your parents. Um, I encourage people to start to think about how these concepts and even the book start with yes. Okay, I'm going to admit there might be like 3 swear words in there. Okay, so with that being said, okay, whoever's listening and watching, knowing that um, this kinds of content, learning how to communicate with somebody, the stuff that's in that book can be utilized by anybody. And so if you have a 13-year-old living with you and you want to bring them to go visit grandma and you guys want to be on the same page, it's a great book for them to read.
yeah.
And additionally, I think we need to reach out and branch out and do more of this type of communication training with children so that they aren't something that we separate from. We don't say, I'm going to take care of mom here, I'm going to take care of you there. We actually bring them into the fold. I think it's more important now than ever. It's going to be the people that we're living with, they're going to be a part of our giving team. We're not going to be able to bring those outsiders in, so we got to use the people that are with us.
Yeah.
So by using and learning these communication techniques and the terms, you're creating a shorthand language with your own family that's going to help you work with that older adult. And we have to start to bring the kids into the fold. We need to start teaching our children how to yes and you mentioned this. You have a brother, and it was your younger sister to him.
Mm-hmm.
I have two children that are younger than my son, and they have used the techniques that we created and that I have taught them. They use them with my autistic older son all the time. It's it's a way that they
It's
can
part of
bridge.
life. You just,
It is.
yeah,
When I
perfect.
say to my youngest, you have to yes and Jack, he knows exactly what I mean. If I say to Sam, is that worth wasting a bullet on? He knows exactly what I mean. So the concepts we created, we kind of brought down to terms, shorthand language that we can share with each other. It makes communicating with each other as care partners so much quicker and easier. We can get to the heart of it so much faster. And so bring those kids into the fold. Don't keep them over here as part of that sandwich. Bring them in, and they want to be involved. And again, it's going to enhance their lives
For
in so
sure.
many levels.
Be
Yeah,
compassionate and empathetic and have all
absolutely.
those skills. You don't know where these things that you're teaching and training them to do are going to lead them in their future years. So, I mean, that's our job ultimately, right? To turn them
Right.
into humans that other people want to be around, frankly.
That's
So
exactly right.
it can't, and people of all types. So Cathy,
Right.
I have enjoyed this so much. I know people are going to get a lot from this. These are things that I'm hearing from people all the time. You're so relatable, and people need grace right now more than ever. And you're serving it up. So thank you for doing everything that you're doing to help the caregiving community.
That's really nice of you to say. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. I look forward to seeing what you're doing.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.